Hey there, it's Syama, CEO of Scaling Retail, and today we're going into retail strategies for 2020. Now, many of you guys, as you're looking at globalization and looking at to where your business is heading, you might be asking yourself, what's going on with China? How do I approach the Chinese market and all of the tariffs and all of the things we've been hearing about in the news? What does that mean for my business? And how can I actually take that information and apply it in a strategic way to protect your business, but to get your business set up for growth? So there are two main components when it comes to addressing China these days. The first is understanding it as a potential new business opportunity and revenue stream for your company. And the second is taking a look at the manufacturing implications and how you might have to rethink your supply chain as your business continues to thrive and flourish. Let's jump into the first one. So number one, when we're starting to look at business in China, we have to ask ourselves, what is the size of the market here and what is the stage of that consumer? Well, it's a $125 billion industry that's growing at about 10% a year. And the Chinese consumer right now is really poised at spending their resources and dollars on international brands. Looking outside of just the luxury brands in the market, we're seeing a big upshift in terms of demand for emerging market brands globally that are starting to get some press and recognition within their markets. Now, this type of consumer has grown up in a really different way. This millennial generation has grown up in single-child homes, spending the majority of their time with their grandparents and not spending a lot of time at home with their parents. This means that the ways in which they're looking to shop and the kinds of marketing and communication that they need to see is very specific to them. So where are they shopping and what are they looking for? This millennial consumer is traveling globally. They understand the importance of a press feature in Vogue, and they understand what it means to have your products written up in some of the biggest digital publications that we think are important here in the US or even in the UK and Europe. In fact, guys, one of our clients who's based in Hong Kong leveraged a really strong international launch in the US in order to then launch her brand in China. Why is that? It's because getting that global validation and that social proof is still extremely important for that millennial consumer. Now, what are some of the other components that are important here as you look to launch into China? Well, we can turn our attention to the example of footwear brand Stadium Goods. Stadium Goods had an amazing launch into the Chinese market. Not only did they launch on a strong e-com platform, but they also had a very good on-the-ground street team. Their content was organic and intuitive to the culture. They didn't just take advertising and marketing strategies for the US and translate that into Mandarin or Cantonese. They developed inherent organic content really centered around the core concerns and the lifestyle of today's millennial Chinese consumer. What else is interesting? Well, we have a variety of different platforms and mechanisms by which your brand can launch successfully. Companies are launching off JD.com. They're also launching off of Tmall. And they're not just taking their brands and flipping them in terms of translations into Mandarin or Cantonese. They're leveraging these multi-line retail platforms in order to be able to really directly get their product in front of these millions of consumers. This is fascinating. Here in the US, we're seeing a different strategy, right? A lot of these brands today are looking at leveraging and driving more traffic to their own domains. But in order to capture the pocketbooks and the hearts of the Chinese consumer, you're looking at filtering your brand through one of these platforms like JD or Tmall. What else do you need to consider when going into China? Well, aside from having a content strategy and a marketing platform that's poised for that market and having the right point of entry, you also have to take a look at your global logistics and how you're going to be shipping and distribution. Again, it's not as simple as turning on your website and saying, hey, I'm going to now ship internationally. You have to be prepared to have localized distribution and to be able to actually sell through those products in a way that's going to give the best customer service. One of my biggest pet peeves when a brand tends to go global is to say, hey, we're just going to ship internationally, but we don't have the infrastructure to support that. So in order to launch correctly, it's not just what's happening on the outside, but it's about your internal business and operations to support that. So it's not just your content and marketing strategy or the platforms that you're using to get in front of the customer. You also have to turn your attentions to your operations. How are you shipping? What are the logistics? What's your distribution center? And ultimately, what's the customer service around your deliverable? If you really do not spend enough time and focus on this, you might get a lot of traffic and a lot of people purchasing. You might have great content, but the conversion and the repeat customer rate is not going to be quite where you want it to be in order to sustain those marketing activities and to sustain that market launch. So the other components that we have to look at when launching in China include looking at having a WeChat platform. So ensuring that you're on that platform, not just in terms of customer service and communication, but you're actually actively accepting payments. Now, in order to do so, you're going to have someone who's in China who's going to be managing that account. That's very important. The second thing to take a look at is refreshing your perspective on what it means to have influencers. Influencers are played very differently in China. We're taking a look at things like key opinion leaders. These are people who are not necessarily shiny and glossy and treated the same way as influencers here in the US, but they're actually opinion leaders that are coming out of having domain knowledge. These are people who are not traditionally so high glossy and so high fashion, but people who are really relatable to this market. Think of it as bloggers who aren't necessarily so fancy, if you will. Now, these key opinion leaders are getting very much in bed with brands. We're seeing really strong collaborations with fashion brands. We're seeing strong collaborations even with product launches. So much so to say that a key opinion leader would go so far as to develop that product and then sell it through their own WeChat platform in order to get sales for that launch. So rethink how you're looking at influencers as well as those payment gateways. Okay, so now we've talked a lot about how to get into China and a lot about what that distribution is going to look like and how to even consider thinking about it. Honestly, guys, if you're a small business here and you're looking to grow, my big suggestion is for you to actually take a look at Tmall, take a look at JD.com, and start to develop an understanding of some of the requirements around what it's going to mean for your business. And certainly when it comes to looking at projections, revenue, and growth in that market, we can certainly help you with that. But getting into a new country and taking on this $125 billion market is going to be an endeavor. You're not going to succeed just simply by opening up your doors. It's going to be a full 360-degree plan. All right, let's turn our attention now. We've talked about China in terms of distribution. Now we need to talk about in terms of the supply chain. A lot of you guys have been working in China from the supply chain standpoint. Perhaps you're sourcing silk there, perhaps you're sourcing other raw materials, but you're definitely there focusing in terms of your manufacturing and your production. Now, what's really interesting is a lot of these manufacturers have done a lot in the last 10 years in terms of raising up the bar in terms of fair labor and having clean and healthy working conditions for the people who are producing your goods. However, all of you have been paying attention to the news, and beyond looking at just the manufacturing aspect of that, we now have to start to consider what it means when tariffs are rising. Just recently, through the current administration, we saw a raise from 10% to 15% in terms of inbound taxes that are going to be increasing on products made in China. Over 90% of apparel, over 60% of housewares, and over 50% of the shoe market is going to be hit with these tariffs. We have yet to see what those true implications look like in the market, as many of those adjustments just happened just quite a few weeks before this video was recorded. However, keep this in mind. There are a couple different strategies that you can use in order to help protect your business during this very murky and volatile time period. Number one, you're going to want to get very good at one of the production rules and tariffs that are going to be applying to your manufacturing. What does that mean? That means if currently a product that is made from 70% silk is going to be at that higher tariff, you might look to produce your garment in 100% silk in order to be able to take advantage of being able to have that lower tariff on that good. Now, certainly if you're a small shop, understanding all of those rules and regulations can be difficult. You're going to certainly want to adhere yourself to a strong production manager and someone who's going to be able to help explain to you what those implications are. But trust me, if 9 out of every $10 is going to see that increase in that price, you really need to develop an approach and a strategy in order to combat that as soon as possible. Now, what's the second thing you can do about rising customs and tariffs? The second thing you can do is start to diversify where you are manufacturing and your supply chain. Now, this is advice that we always give our clients here at Scaling Retail. So many of our clients are not going to be as concerned with this. Why? Because we constantly tell our clients to be sourcing and sampling globally. That doesn't just mean sourcing between factories in a particular region. So that means taking a look at manufacturing and sourcing in places like India, Vietnam, or even in places like Mauritius. Now, why is that important? Because you never want to be overly reliant on one point of manufacturing. We saw just about a year and a half ago with the similar threat of NAFTA happening here that all of a sudden brands that were manufacturing and doing business in Mexico and Canada were going to have to reshift their supply chain and the economics around that. At that moment in time, again, we had told our clients, hey, you should be in an okay position because of your strategy towards supply chain and towards sampling. So guys, this means if you haven't done so already, this is a time to actually either hook up with an international supplier, a fixer, or someone who's going to help you start to diversify your opportunities here when it comes to sourcing and developing your samples. It might seem like a little bit more money to invest at first, but when it comes to these threats in this volatile time period, you're going to be well equipped to approach any of these tariffs and taxes, whether it's from China or anywhere else in the world, when you've done your due diligence and you have multiple supply chains set up. All right, guys, if you're interested in entering the market into China, or if you're interested in even pivoting away from your supply chain and how you're doing business in China, send us an email at hello@scalingretail.com. We have a portfolio of clients globally, helping them not only launch in the US, but helping them establish and grow their businesses worldwide. When it comes to manufacturing and operations, how to diversify and make smart business decisions, you need a CEO by your side who's going to help you walk through all of the different logistics and details that will protect your business and help you thrive. Send us an email, guys, at hello@scalingretail.com. Would love to hear from you. Talk to you soon. Bye.